Time for the market report. Looked like prices took another dive.
That they did, Mike. Seems we can't get a consistent rally, especially in row crops, while cattle still going strong. We'll talk about both, but first, the numbers. What were the week's biggest gains and losses? And then in our row report, what's making row crop markets move? An expert weighs in. And finally, more cattle market talk with Dr. Josh Maples. So, markets closed on the downswing, all commodities affected save for one. Let's take a look. The week's only gain, lean hogs, up about 1 cent. That's more than a 1% increase from the previous week. The week's biggest loss, sugar, down nearly a cent, a 5% decrease from the previous week. Okay, so this week on our row report, we continue to talk about how and why prices are falling and just can't seem to find a real rally to push them upward despite the U.S. having competitive prices. Analyst Chris Robinson says it seems farmers are going to store the crops and wait out the prices for a rally, at least those that haven't already been sold.
I think farmers are going to do that. Typically, they like to store corn, and they typically will sell the beans off the combine. And as far as wheat, they'll sell what they need to sell and wait. I mean, you go back, wheat especially has always been a difficult market to trade and or hedge. Corn, I think that's probably where the biggest risk is financially for the whole country. When you look at, where are farmers exposed to price risk? It's in corn. Everybody really needs, the high of the year was 479. Are we going to get back there? I don't know. This is going to be the first time in a long time where we might not get back to those spring insurance prices, which was 470. So I'm hopeful, but I'm not blindingly hopeful. It's always nice to be hopeful. If we're lucky, in my opinion, we may get one more chance. There's a gap back in the July 4th weekend where we were making highs. We gapped lower. It comes in around 434, 435. That's going to be the big test. If we can get these guys to push us up there, you may see some more fun short covering. They bought 35,000 last week, so they were only short 110. It feels to me like they probably bought another 15 or 20 this week. We'll know when they get the data today. And at this point, if I'm long corn, if I'm a farmer, everybody that's watching this, you've got to hope that those guys start to feel a little bit of heat and cover some of those positions. It may give us one more blip up. And all I can say is if we get there, you got to be ready to do something.
Moving on to cattle, we also continue discussions of both our state and national herds with Dr. Josh Maples. As we already know, price is at a historic high and beef has come along for the ride. How long can we expect this? According to Dr. Maples, quite a while, and it may be even longer if the New World screwworm finds its way up here.
Yeah, it's a really great time to have cattle, or to have cattle to sell. It's a tough time if you're trying to buy cattle right now. And so, this time of year, Zach, is whenever a lot of producers are selling their spring-born calves. August through October really is when a lot of producers are weaning and selling their calves. So we're seeing the highest revenue for calves that we've ever seen. A really strong year for cattle producers. Now, for producers who are trying to purchase calves, either as stockers or maybe even purchase replacements for their operations, they're facing the highest prices ever for those new animals. So we don't have any clear data right now that would suggest to me, hey, we're obviously expanding this cow herd. What you look for on things like that are we seeing significantly fewer heifers being sold as feeder cattle? That would tell you they're staying back on the farm or on the ranch to be cows next year. Are we seeing significantly lower beef cow slaughter? Now, we are seeing lower beef cow slaughter, which would suggest we're not culling as deeply as we have been. I would call the evidence mixed at this point. We might be at the very, very, very starts, but there's just not enough data out there to suggest that we are broadly expanding this herd. If I have to project forward, I think we're going to be mostly level this year in terms of compared to where we were at January 1 of the start of the year. I think we'll be pretty similar to that number by the end of this year, which would be significant because it'd be the first year that we didn't see a drop in beef cows. But it's certainly, I don't expect us to see more beef cows and not a lot more beef cows by January. Yeah, New World screwworm, the biggest impact directly right now. Now, if we're ever dealing with this in the U.S., actually have cases in the U.S., that will be the biggest impact. But for right now, the biggest impact is that we have closed the border for live animals coming in from Mexico. That's been a big impact, especially localized. A lot of those cattle would stay in the kind of really south U.S., so think feedlots in Texas and I do think that has certainly tightened supplies even further. We already have really tight supplies domestically, and then we stopped bringing in some of those, and so that tightened it even more. I think that's boosted our prices, certainly locally in the South anyway. So right now, I think that's the biggest impact, and there's no clear signal of when those might resume. There were efforts to try to resume that back in July, but they didn't work because screwworm continues to move north in Mexico. So that's kind of where we are right now, just hoping that we don't get it here. Because again, if we get it here, that is a much bigger deal than what we're currently seeing.
And that's it for a deeper look into the markets. Seems row crops can't find a rally while livestock can't really stop theirs. That is, until demand changes.